Alrighty. Getting ready to stream Alan Wake once again. I believe we just finished chapter 4? And as usual, I'm going to test the chat, because that one time it didn't work, and I figured out how to fix it, but... Oh, I'm sorry. Alright. Excuse me, game. Go ahead and play while I'm talking. I swear I did not press any buttons. Okay. Here we go. Very cool scene here. I think we'll get that last time on. Oh, no. Okay, we got here. Alright. Well, I'm still... Right here, honey.
I'm coming. It's all right. I'm coming.
Whoa.
It was a crazy drunken dream, and yet it was more than that. It was the truth, a suppressed memory unearthed by the Andersons' moonshine. I was there, an out-of-body observer. This was the night Alice and I had arrived at Bright Falls.
Well, it won't let me
the
test
night
it, it's fine.
Alice had disappeared. I had a chance to find out what had happened.
Actually, I take it back. I'm still gonna test it. Hold on. Yeah, don't mind me, game. You can go ahead and play it yourself without me, I guess.
Beyond this lost memory, there was nothing. I had to follow the footsteps of my past self to find out what had happened that night.
Helen's like, are you playing the game? No, you can walk and stuff. Just play the game. Does he have anything else to say? Oh, it's first person. Oh, shoot. Oh, crazy. What's this say? Sent on a strange spirit journey by the Andersons' moonshine, Wake must follow his past self to find out what happened during the missing week.
Whatever power had brought me back to this night at the lake was also stopping me from leaving. I had no choice but to see it through, to find out what had happened.
Alan, you realize now that means I need to sit around here and wait for maybe one more dialogue prompt or something. See if you have more to tell me. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Oh, you know I gotta. Oh, it won't let me jump or anything. Once again, I kind of remember this.
I remembered being surprised to see the cabin dark. Alice would have never turned the lights off.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Won't even let me run. Bird leg cabin. Nothing cool over here. You have to crawl around. Probably literally crawling at this pace.
Alice! Alice!
Yeah, right, Alice. I almost call her Ellen. Maybe I can get a gun in here. Maybe I can't. I mean, I don't have hands or anything to hold the gun, but, you know. I mean, I'm worried about her in the abstract, but also, like, we know she dead, so... Wish this would be lighter. I would adjust the screen, but I think it'll probably change soon. Right, nothing hidden. And... There's just no... Okay, no, the door is open. I thought we just did not have a door. Ooh, ocean noise.
I remembered thinking, I caught a glimpse of her form underwater, sinking into the darkness.
Oh, you're out there. Okay, sorry, Alan, hold on.
Diving
I'm stuck on a
was the
table.
last vague memory I had of that night.
Alan, wait, come back.
After
I'm trying
that,
to look at you.
The next thing I could remember was waking up behind the wheel of the crash car and finding the first pages of the manuscript. I couldn't find her in all that blackness. I must have thought she drowned.
I mean, yep. Ooh, he's like a ghost.
Jagger had Alice. And so she had me.
Alice!
Aw.
I'd been easy prey.
Look at the cabin. Is there someone in the window?
Me.
Alice?
Well, I'm in the front porch.
Maybe she didn't drown after all. Maybe she's inside.
Alice!
Yes.
Oh my god.
The dark presence had touched me. She had dug her nails into my brain and used me, made me her puppet.
Oh, I probably should have gone down here, huh? Then again, maybe I want to scope here and see if she's in the... Oh, it says go back into the cabin. Alright. I thought the spiritual journey would involve insight, but nope, it mostly involves needing to look at the narrative prompts, I
She
guess.
must be here
Ah.
somewhere. Maybe upstairs in the study.
Oh, I'm
Alice!
tall.
Yes, that's
Or
where
they're very
she
short.
is. You can apologize.
Alice!
You'll laugh at the
Oh.
whole thing together and put it behind you.
Does that ever happen where you say, oh, we'll laugh at this and put it behind us? Does that
She's
ever
not
actually
here. You were
happen?
foolish to think so. No, she's dead. She drowned.
No, no,
Very
no!
neat that she's keeping up
It's
this same
your
Barbara
fault
Yeager
your
shtick.
wife is dead. You are guilty. All she wanted was to help you right. You killed her.
Ah!
Does this mean the lake is, like,
Hush, there's
trans,
still
actually?
hope.
Because I went from
Cauldron
being a lake
is
to a woman,
special
and
place.
seems
Here,
like she's,
you
like,
have the power to change things.
taking on that gender identity, like, permanently.
She wanted you to write. I will tell you what to do.
Yeah, I think the lake is trans. Cool.
You can write her back. The story will come true, and all will be well again.
You seem trustworthy.
She
No, I know
had
it's because he
Alice,
was, like, out of it,
the
and she dug
manuscript
nails
was
in her
the
brain or
ransom
whatever.
for her.
Whoa, so the kidnapper thing was like a metaphor. Ooh.
Yes. All right.
Okay, neat. Good
I'll
job.
fix it. I'll bring her back.
That's how you get good writing. It wasn't
No,
spooky.
I wrote it. I
Okay.
remembered it all now. In the dark, I'd written for days, a week, almost a complete manuscript of a novel entitled Departure. Jagger had been my editor, whispering in my ear, making sure that the unfolding story would make her more and more powerful. I thought I was saving Alice. Even with the cobwebs she put in my head, some part of me had been aware enough to write my escape into the story, to bring a light into the cabin to release me before I could finish. To interrupt the horror story before the ending, where darkness consumed everything and everyone. Zane was weak and far away, but I had written him into the story, and his light had been enough to set me free.
Whoa.
It isn't here now. I'm here because it was written. I brought the light to set you free. You must hurry. It will know I'm here. It will be back soon. It stole the skin of my Barbara a long time ago. She looks so old.
Oh. I didn't remember how this timeline stuff played out, so that is, in fact, cool.
I had woken up, confused and groggy, my mind consumed by darkness and fear. All I could do was to escape. The week spent in the cabin had taken its toll. I was barely conscious and fading fast.
And, again, still heavily
It
concussed.
had to have cost Zane terribly, thrown him even deeper into whatever dark place he now haunted. But he had managed to weaken the dark presence, kept me safe that night.
Oh god. So they do know how bad the driving mechanics are. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, he wasn't concussed yet. Got it.
My fault.
That's right, James Joyce. It's your fault, and you're gonna pay for it.
Okay, hang on. I do want to soak that all into my brain folds because I remembered like I said before, lots of little scenes in the story. I remembered the song, I remembered a lot of the plot, but I didn't remember that that was the missing week, that it was because he had written all this ahead of time, and not that this was like a story within a story. Exactly. It was, but then the big question right now, obviously, is how Barbara okayed this. Which it sounds like it's not like a plot hole or anything. It sounds like he had to be very careful to write a story in a way that Barbara, like, again, he had said in one of the clips that it was more her editing than his. Did he try a lot more blatant attempts at first? And then, or was this, did he have to, like, where, like, and then, suddenly, everything was fine and Alice was alive, the end. And then she was like, this is shit, try again. I wonder how she missed this, or I wonder if it's even because it involved Thomas Zane. Because we know that the lake took the form of Barbara Yeager in order to manipulate him, but kept that form. Never free will, which again, lake trans. But I wonder if, other than just her gender and appearance, and then the fact that she's aged seemingly in real time, if there's some kind of, I love my possession stories. I love my, Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. What if there's a little bit of the old self and the new self, and it's controlling or influencing some of the choices? I wonder if, because the lake is in the form of Barbara, if maybe Barbara had some attachment to Zane to the point where she was thinking, well, this is possibly an out for him, or this is possibly something weak and I probably should get rid of it in the story, but then maybe she was just too happy to see Zane again, and maybe even in the context of the lake having an affection for her that, was originally Barbara's, but then it worked something, right? So maybe the lake does actually love Zane. I think that would be kind of neat if that was part of its undoing, because the lake took the form of Barbara, but also took on some of her weaknesses, or at least her human attachments. I think that would be a good explanation. Obviously entirely headcanon at this point, but that seems cool. If that's not the case, obviously you could just write it off, like hand-wave it very easily, just be like, oh, well, Barbara is not all-knowing, she wasn't paying that much attention, she wasn't that good an editor, the lake was focused on its own power and didn't notice the tiny cracks that might have been put in there, whatever, but I think my explanation at least makes a little more sense and is a little bit more narratively weighted. I'm not sure what otherwise it would be. Oh, what? No.
Previously on Alan Wake.
Oh no, I skipped a cutscene. Ah, damn, I'm sorry. I paused it and then I unpaused it. God damn. I don't know if I can even, because it already saved. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, whoopsie. That, I feel like that shouldn't be what happens. You know what, let me even just, real quick, Alan Wake game transcripts. Because if it was just like one line of dialogue by the FBI guy, maybe we didn't miss that much. Alright, let's see. Nightingale finds the manuscript. Okay. Blah blah. Oh, it just has a YouTube clip. I thought this was a transcript, not just a list of stuff. Oh, I see. I was using DuckDuckGo, and it took manuscript as a synonym for transcript. Cool. Yeah, unfortunately I don't see it here. It's probably out there, but I don't. Damn. Well, I'll quit the menu real quick, and maybe...
Previously on
Oh, this is a different scene. Okay. Crap.
The Dark Presence, I wrote a horror story that is coming true. Jagger had been my editor, making sure that the unfolding story would make her more and more powerful. Some part of me had been aware enough to write my escape into the story.
Together we can create something absolutely wonderful.
the lake, it does something to the works of art created. It makes them come true. My mom gave me this old light switch.
The clicker.
Alice is being kept in a dark prison. I need to find Cynthia Weaver to fix this.
It's your fault, and you're gonna pay for it.
Well, we're expecting a record crowd from the neighboring counties. Naturally, we hope to break the record set by last year's Moose Fest in
Oop, oh.
our neighboring town, Walkery. Ladies and gentlemen, some people have asked me, what's the big deal about Deer Fest? And I think that this sums it up. It's about friendship and community. We've got a great party coming up. Let's try to hold it in until tomorrow and get through the night in one piece, all right?
Oh, Barry.
I have it. Someone will come for it when the time is right. Thomas said so. He wrote it. The key is insurance. It's my job to keep it safe. Safe in the light. Always in the light.
Best cupcakes in something.
All the manuscript pages were gone. The FBI agent had taken them.
I think
Okay.
my tongue just took a crap in my mouth.
Okay.
Oh,
We're not in a cutscene, so...
wait, we're in...
Yeah, we can pause. Okay. I am actually curious enough. I am going to pull it up on YouTube quick to see if I can... Surely it's just one line or two, right? Alan Wake, episode 4. No commentary, I guess. Yeah, episode 4, The Truth, 4K.
Previous.
No. Muting that. Okay. Nope, she looks so old. Mind consumed. Turn him deeper. Goes off the cliff. Okay, that's right, James Joyce. It's your fault, and you're going to pay for it. Oh my god, so I just literally paused as it was transitioning to the last time on Alan Wake. I didn't even skip over anything. Oh my god. Okay. Cool, cool. Cool, we're back.
Ow. Ow, this is not good.
That about sums it up.
Aw, Barry.
Oh, I am never drinking again.
I need to talk to Weaver. She's the one in the song. The Lady of the Light.
Even remember?
Crazy lady? Whatever you say, Al, but we're stuck here. They're not gonna...
interviewed Wake.
I had some reading to do first, Sheriff, and let me tell you, it was an interesting read. Well, I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. It's all
I only know
here.
like half
All
the
the
authors.
evidence,
He uses
including
to make fun of us.
conspiracy to murder a federal agent. There's no way you're walking out of here. You hear me in there, Bret Easton Ellis?
I don't know these people.
Agent Nightingale, I want to talk to your superior.
Well, we all want things, Sheriff. I wanted my... Look, that's not possible right now.
Wanted my mommy back.
Agent Nightingale, I insist.
I'm sorry, Alice.
What's wrong?
Lady, are you stupid? It's a trick. It's an obvious trick.
Okay, I've had enough of this crap. Wake, I'm gonna trust you with this.
You're joking.
Agent Nightingale, your opinion would matter more if you
Oh,
were sober,
damn.
if I actually believed you were here on official business.
Yeah.
Whoa! Get back in the cell, Stephen King. The only way you're leaving this place is over my dead... Wait a minute. I know.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's cool. Sorry, Nightingale.
Oh my god!
Light. We need light. It's the only way to fight this thing.
In my office. I've got your things there. Follow me.
Oh, I thought I could
Man,
make her shine
We're
again.
sitting ducks with the lights out.
Stay cool. I can get the emergency power on.
Barry, what? Alright, I guess... Let's see, manuscripts. Alright, I guess I'm gonna read through what I have so far, because in character, well, I don't have all the pages yet, but he remembers having written them, so... Alright. There's some missing pages that are in nightmare difficulty mode, which obviously I will never have. Ever in my life.
Departure by Alan Wake.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize he would read it for me. Alright.
The man turned to face me. His face was covered in shadows. It was hard to make him out in the darkness of the forest that surrounded us, but the axe he lifted was plain to see. It glistened with the blood of his victim. He grinned madly. The shadows were alive, distorting his features. It was a scene from a nightmare, but I was awake.
And I was a Jordan.
The Taken stood before me. It was impossible to focus on it, as if it stood in a blind spot caused by a brain tumor and eye disease. It was bleeding shadows like ink underwater, like a cloud of blood from a shark bite. I was terrified. I squeezed the flashlight like my life depended on it, willing it to stop coming any closer. Suddenly something gave, and the light seemed to shine brighter.
I do remember him having read these. Wake attacked by birds.
I heard them before I saw them, swooping down from the sky and screeching as they came. I spun around just as the cloud was upon me. For an instant, I stared into 100 dead eyes, black pearls glittering in the darkness. I raised the flashlight and the swarm exploded like fireworks. Feathers burned, turned into ash. I couldn't hear my scream above theirs.
Alright, so again, this is something that he was typing that Barbara was proofreading for him. So the fact that it's very disjointed and stuff, that might not actually be Wake's normal writing style. It might not be, I mean, he already said this is more her writing than his. He did switch the protagonist partway through to be him, so I don't know if this is supposed to actually be Alan Wake yet, or if when he says that, that means that he went through and rewrote the manuscript, like revised it. Because that is probably, I don't know, I got the, like, I thought he was saying that he was writing it kind of in the order that it happened, but the fact that they were going over it and editing it so much, that's probably not true. So maybe this is supposed to be Wake from the beginning, or maybe it wasn't, but now it is.
At first I kept finding the pages as if by accident. The book I couldn't remember was either a terrible and true prophecy, or an act of creation that had rewritten the world. I began to hunt the pages feverishly, for they held the answer to the mystery. With it, I could save myself. With it, I could save Alice.
Okay, so yeah, this is definitely after he's written himself in. And I guess as a, you know, entity of horror, question mark, don't know the lake's origin story, exactly. I mean, put a pin in that, because I think I had the idea at some point that maybe the lake itself was written to have power by the Anderson brothers, but I don't remember if that's canon or not. But if it's a horror creature trying to write something to be scary, this is more, I guess, seeing it less as like a novel and more as a work of poetry or similarly disjointed prose maybe makes a little bit more sense, where it's not supposed to be a narrative, just supposed to be a bunch of scary looking pictures of a
I stepped into the gas station's garage. It was dark and quiet. The place was a mess. It looked like someone trashed the place, or that there'd been some kind of fight. Light spilled into the room through an open door at the back, and I made my way toward it. Without any warning, I was blinded by a bright light. An old portable TV on the shelf had come alive by itself. Impossibly, I could see myself on the screen, talking like a madman.
That's what happens whenever I rewatch the streams.
The cabin on Cauldron Lake? She asked. The sheriff looked at me suspiciously. The early morning light flooded through the office windows. I would probably never have gotten out of the woods alive without her help, but I couldn't tell her the truth of what I'd faced the previous night. She'd think I was lying or crazy. She'd lock me up, and she wouldn't help me find Alice.
This kind of makes me think of that, I think it's Generation Zero, Twitter account that's supposed to be, you know, hinting at stuff for Generation Lost, and it's, again, a lot of just disjointed little comments on things, and then part of the mystery is trying to figure out how this turns into a story.
Stucky spat on the garage floor and tried to shake the cobwebs from his head. Ever since the couple never showed to pick up the keys, things had been fuzzy. Something, a feeling, caught his attention. Stuckey looked up and stared as his brain tried in vain to process the horror before him. He stumbled back, knocking over a can of oil. A black pool spread across the floor while he struggled for a brief moment, then let go as the unrelenting darkness engulfed him.
Not very nice to target specific people that already exist in a story like this, Alan.
Rose knew she had been gushing, but right now she didn't care. As far as she was concerned, her brief meeting with Alan Wake was literally the high point of her life. She watched as
Wow.
he got in the car with his wife. She was pretty, confident, at ease with Wake. Not like Rose. They were perfect for each other. She'd have given anything to be called their friend.
That's pretty fucked up, Alan. Like, gross. Fuck off. Alright, also, the week timeline thing doesn't quite make sense for when he's describing the things that happened before he got to the lake. Like, I thought that the story wasn't rewriting history. It was writing things that would come to pass. So I'm not sure. Like, that scene where Rose had talked to Wake, that was before, like, immediately before Barbara gave him the keys.
Barry Wheeler was bouncing off the walls. He jumped on a plane after his calls were ignored by both Al and Alice for several days. It could mean that they were both on a second honeymoon, but Barry didn't buy it. Al had been way too unstable for that, not sleeping, messed up. Barry had years of experience dealing with Alan Wake, and he couldn't ignore it. Something was wrong.
Interesting that he made the narrative, like, be kind of in Barry's perspective there. Because, referring to him as Al. Maybe it's that he's writing things that he knows happened and just describing them as relevant to the plot? Not sure. I mean, we have a lot to get through here, sorry. I don't know what the question mark... Oh, unread. I've never read some of these. Cool. Oh, and there are 2 of them that I'm actually missing that are not in Nightmare Mode.
It's
Interesting.
true what they say about the fall and the sudden stop at the end. I'd lain here in the snow while the lurid chain of scenes that had led me here kept playing in my head. A rerun of my own private snuff movie. A memory of my corpse. Alone at my own wake.
Whoa, his name.
Thinking in metaphors again. The femme fatale was gone. Only a sour taste remained of the kiss that killed me.
Okay, so the voice changing, I'm guessing this means this was before, like, this manuscript, is before Wake had gotten to it, and then this is the fictional character supposed, like, his main character, normally, who would be experiencing this? Because it doesn't say Wake here.
This was a late goodbye. 13 years
Yeah,
after I'd
okay.
gotten my revenge. It had finally caught up with me. It had been a long time to bear the pain. My blood painted the snow red. A gruesome slushy dissolved all the scattered painkillers and leisurely dripped down to the sewer, mingling with the bile of the city, becoming one with it. I can see them now. My wife and my baby. Honey, I'm home.
Okay, so yeah, this is, I don't remember, Casey, I think is the name, of his main character. Of course, very weird that this would not have gotten edited out yet. Like, doesn't make any sense.
In spite of its human mask, to describe the dark presence as intelligent would have implied human qualities on something decidedly inhuman. Nonetheless, it found the one spot in the diner that was dark enough. Some light spilled into the corridor, ravaging it. But it took the pain. Horrible as it was, the writer would soon fix that. He would be coming to the one place where it still had power.
Again, kind of trying to get in the head of some of the characters. I'm not sure if he can actually control 3 manuscripts or if it's just part of the storytelling.
The kidnapper fired his gun one last time, and the shadow vanished into the darkness it had come from. See? Nothing to it, Wake. The thought of Alice in his hands was revolting. We stood on the wooden platform of Lover's Peak, the waterfall on the mountain behind us, the lights of the radio mast blinking red in the heights above. I fought with the urge to take a swing, force myself to speak. Let's cut the act now. Where's my wife? Alice looked through the viewfinder, lining up the shot. Cauldron Lake was breathtaking. Something caught her eye. A figure standing in the shadows behind the cabin, like a thin woman in a black dress. She lowered the camera and looked again. No one there. Just a collection of bushes that looked vaguely human-shaped. She shook her head and laughed.
Oh.
Barry had never gotten along with Alice, but he knew Alan loved her with an almost frightening intensity. And now something had happened to Alice. And here was Al armed with a gun and saying things people got put in padded cells for. It was as if his friend had experienced a massive psychotic episode and was now totally disconnected from reality. It scared the shit out of Barry.
I feel like almost frightening intensity is a very fanficky kind of phrase, which is not a bad thing. I think it's a good phrase, but I also don't know if I would use that to describe Alan's affection for Alice, although he apparently thinks so. Also, as a note, the first-person thing is not what you would normally expect from a bunch of
The air in
novels.
the visitor center was heavy with an awful smell, as if some rotten drowned thing had crawled up from its grave. Rusty kept coughing blood. My eyes were drawn to the twisted shape of his broken leg. The attack had been vicious. Max whined in his cage. Rusty's eyes were wild with fear and terror. He gasped. "Mr. Wake, it happened just the way it was on that page." The visitor center was sturdy, but the impact turned the front of the building into splinters. Rusty was thrown across the lobby like a rag doll and hit the far wall hard. It didn't hurt until he tried to move and saw his leg bend the wrong way, felt the broken ribs stabbing him on the inside. Rusty howled in pain and fear, suddenly afraid to die alone.
I feel like that would have come first, right? Because that's when he broke his leg, then Rusty died.
At the last instant, I changed direction and threw myself down. The axe splintered the trunk of a tree. I stumbled into the pool of bright light. My lungs burned. I was too exhausted to move. I tensed as I waited for the killing blow, but it never came. I raised my head. Nothing moved in the darkness beyond. For the moment, bathed in the cold light, I was safe.
There's also the question now if the Lady of the Light, like, is that something outside of Alan? Did he know about it when he wrote it in? Did he not write it in?
In that last instant of consciousness, Rusty thought about Rose.
Aww.
He was older than she was. Rose was barely out of her teens, but she made him feel young and forget what a train wreck his long-dead marriage had been.
Yikes.
He still wore the ring. He'd been waiting for her to tell him to take it off. Now she never would.
I don't think I picked up on that one.
I turned the corner, afraid of what the flashlight's beam might reveal. Suddenly, a roughly painted symbol of a torch glowed in the light. Behind it, hidden by a rock, sat a battered metal trunk. It was here for a reason, packed with supplies, batteries, flares, ammo, things you need to make it through the darkness of the night. Something left behind by someone who knew what I knew, and more. Agent Nightingale didn't want to be in Bright Falls. These little communities revolted him, and he didn't like the trees or the coffee. He now knew that impossible horrors lurked behind the storefronts and smiles. He desperately wanted to turn the car around and just drive until he passed out or ran out of road and booze. But he had a job to do. He had a rider to catch, at any cost.
I mean, I don't think it's been implied yet that Alan writing this created Nightingale, right?
On more
Not
than
sure.
one occasion, Alice had tried to explain to me how it felt to be afraid of the dark. To her, darkness wasn't simply the absence of light, but something more tangible than that. It was something you could touch and feel. Worse than that, it was something with a mind of its own, something malicious and malign. For her, things changed when they were wrapped in darkness. They turned into something else, something foreign, and nothing was safe or innocent anymore. I'd never really understood what she meant, until now.
I guess also interesting is that maybe the darkness of the lake, maybe its whole thing was more lake than darkness until these, until this writerly stuff got put on it.
The night had been one desperate situation after another. I was exhausted, and my body felt as though it had been chewed up and spat out. The flashlight was heavy in my hand, and each pull of the trigger sent a painful shock up my arm. But I was finally out of the woods and things were looking up. That's when I heard the chainsaw.
I just read it. Two sentence horror stories. I was finally out of the woods and things were looking up. That's when I heard the chainsaw.
When Barry saw the darkness attack the visitor center, it made him a believer. The men Al said he'd shot, they hadn't been just locals on crank. Somehow the world had changed, like the channel had been switched without warning. You think you're watching a sitcom, and you're really watching a horror show. When the birds started attacking the cabin, Barry wasn't surprised, just terrified.
Okay, and what I meant to say before, was that these things in other people's heads are all omniscient third-person narrative, but then we suddenly switch back to first-person limited.
The FBI agent's command froze me in place. I considered surrender. It was all falling apart anyway. I could give in, let someone else deal with it, but it felt all wrong. Call it instinct, his posture, the way he held the gun. He was no friend. Shots ringing in my ears, I leaped for the hole in the fence and stumbled into the darkness beyond.
I mean, I wanted to know Wake's thought process then, but just the guy pointing a gun at me might not be friendly is not what I thought it was. Like, yeah, I would hope not, kind of.
Nobody in Bright Falls seemed to know where Al was, but Rose, the waitress at the diner, had seen him. From what Barry could tell, Al pretty much fell off the face of the earth when he left the diner. Rose was just the kind of fan that Al hated, but she really tried to help. She was smart, too, knew a lot about what was going on in the town, knew a lot about Al, even knew who Barry was. Barry liked her. That was no big surprise. When it came to women, Barry and Al rarely saw eye to eye.
So I don't know that much about Alice as a person, other than the actions that we've already seen from her, which are, that she wanted, she's supportive of her husband, but worried about him, and their relationship isn't going so great. She's trying to communicate that to him. Does talk to this doctor guy about him behind his back, but also in a way where it seems just well-intentioned. We do know, like, when she was saying, oh, don't let Barry get these posters or whatever, it seems like in a creative process way they have differing opinions, which makes sense. But I guess I don't, it seems like there's a lot being made of Barry and Alice not getting along as people, which I don't really know why yet, and saying that Barry and Al kind of have opposite tastes with women, that's interesting, and I don't know, I wonder.
Sarah didn't care about the legal threats Wake's agent had made. She let Wake go without argument, because there was something about him she couldn't quite put her finger on, something that reminded her of her father. She didn't think Wake would hurt his wife. Then she thought about the way he waded into Hartman, that hair-trigger rage flaring up without warning.
He waded into... Okay. From context, I recognize that she's saying he punched him. Not familiar with that. No. But also, like, so these are physical pages that Alan has typed previously when he did not know these people, right? So, is it the power of the lake that made her have a good relationship with her father?
The logging site was a mess. The modular office had been pushed off the cliff. Deputy Thornton climbed up from the wreckage excited, breathing hard from the exertion. Nobody there. It's weird. Don't you think that's weird? Bored, Mulligan let out a mighty snort. Hell, it's always
mighty
weird,
snort.
Thornton. Just a question of sorting out what kind of weird it is this time around.
I'm not going to try to do a mighty snort. I don't think I could give it
Shadows
justice.
stirred and the wind picked up as I ran through the forest. I felt the dark presence turning its gaze toward me. Then the moonlight was blotted out by dark shadows that raced violently across the ground, moving too swiftly to be natural. Darkness gathered between the trees and melted again to reveal the Taken. No natural path had brought them here. Mr. Randolph liked Rose. That little smile she had. How she was still sweet when life had tried so hard to make her bitter. It wasn't any of his business what she did in her trailer. But those strangers, the writer and his smart-ass sidekick,
Wow.
looked like trouble. And they'd been in there for hours, way past her normal bedtime. He reached for the phone and called the sheriff's station.
I mean, that does also help explain why there were so many cops just there. But also, Alan writing in Barry as his smartass sidekick. Smartass, I'm not worried about. Sidekick, come on, Al.
Decades, the darkness that wore Barbara Jagger's skin slept fitfully in the dark place that was its home and prison. It was hungry and in pain. It dreamed of its nights of glory when the poet's writing had called it from the depths and given it a brief, terrible taste of power and freedom. The rock stars had stirred it from the deep sleep the poet had sunk it back to in the end. When it sensed the writer on the ferry, it opened its eyes.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's because Al is so special. That's why this is all happening, because he's just such a special and good little writer that supernatural forces have to talk about how cool he is. Okay, so I didn't realize or remember that the reason why Barbara aged in real time is just because she's not just like a shadowy creature. It sounds like they're saying that she just like lived her freaking life here in this town because and Tom was gone and she's just like, well, I guess I have to live here now and pretend to be Barbara. Have I been saying Jagger when it's Jagger? Have to pretend to be Barbara Jagger? Like, she's just been here? Like, she has to buy groceries and stuff? Like, what? Okay, and then the timeline of... So, Poet called it from the depths. So, Zane is the one who created / summoned it into being, right? And then Poet also sunk it back down. Then the Andersons had stirred it from the deep sleep, which, from what they had said before, that they had opened the door a crack, and then Alan had, like, thrown it wide open. So maybe just with the songs, I know that this does get exposited. I think it does, about how they had been able to use the scary power of the lake to do stuff for their own rock music ends. Yeah, okay.
Nightingale stared through the broken studio window into the dark woods. He turned around, started to walk out, but Maine grabbed his arm. "Young man, you almost shot me. You don't shoot off rounds at people like that. What's the matter with you?" Nightingale shook his arm free, marched out. His cheeks burned with rage and humiliation.
Okay.
Sarah trusted her gut, and her gut said Agent Nightingale was an asshole. He felt wrong, and it wasn't just the smell of stale booze. It was in the way he flashed his badge, pulled rank, the look in his eyes when he wanted answers. Where was Alan Wake? What was this about an accident? Where was his wife? And most importantly, why did she let Wake go? He wouldn't answer her questions. Federal business was all he'd say.
Okay, it didn't sound like she had wanted to arrest Alan in the first place, so why is she wondering why she would let him go? Or why Nightingale would know it. But also, on a potential sexism note, I'm seeing that the women are all referred to by their first names. Even Sarah, who has only been acting in the same official capacity that Nightingale and other characters have been. Rusty is presumably a nickname, but I think everyone else is, for the most part, last name, except Barry, who's a friend. I feel like that's not right. Like, that implies kind of a, familiarity in a not good way.
The pipe wrenched itself loose from the bridge's steel framework.
Oh, also the daddy thing.
Wrapped
Like,
in
what?
darkness, it floated in midair, twitching. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The heavy object lurched at me with impossible force. I threw myself out of the way, but just barely. When I turned my flashlight on it, it shook in a dark rage before it flew at me again.
But yeah, the daddy thing, that's actually pretty screwed up, Wake. Like, that we only have one brief glimpse into this woman. Like, Alice's existence seems to mostly be in here when we're in her head. Like, just observing the world around her, like seeing Barbara, that's part of the plot. and also obviously how much Alan cares about her. Rose is also mostly defined by how much she cares about Wake. Sarah is not defined by that so much, so instead we got, I think I care about Wake because he reminds me of my dad.
I slammed the door shut right in his smug face. He pleaded for me to open the door. True to form, the asshole actually thought I would obey. I had no sympathy left, no guilt either, not for him. I took a moment to savor the scream. I bet I had a smile on my face. It was all that I had time for. The dark presence was inside the lodge with me.
Have we written about Hartman, I think is his name, doctor, fake doctor guy?
The darkness surged towards me, sucking everything loose from the ground into its depths, tugging at my clothes.
Gross.
I saw the flare the kidnapper had dropped and threw myself towards it just as I felt my feet leave the ground. The darkness embraced me with the force of a tornado. Somehow I managed to light the flare. The darkness roared and cast me away. I fell toward the dark waters of the lake far below.
So Barbara was cool with that. Like, maybe because he fell in the dark waters.
Rose didn't know how the strange old lady got in her trailer, and she looked wrong somehow. The woman showed her teeth in an approximation of a smile and traced a finger down Rose's cheek. "Pretty girl," she said. Rose felt as if she was falling asleep, but her knees didn't buckle. The crone spoke in a whisper, her words ice cold and dark in Rose's ear.
Okay. I'm just trying to think about the written Barbara's motivations. Like, pretty girl, why would she say that?
With Nightingale gone and the night wind blowing in through the broken studio window, Maine stared at Sarah. The sheriff looked away. Maine's voice shook with barely controlled anger. "That boy's doing more drinking than thinking. I hope you know what you're doing, Sarah. He's got a sickness in his eyes. You take my word for it. He wants Wake for a reason, and it's not for anything good." When Thomas Zane fell for Barbara Jagger, it happened fast. She was young, vibrant, and beautiful, full of life. He had never been a very happy man, and without any seeming effort, she had changed all that. Zane felt good for the first time in his life. Everything she did was another piece of a jigsaw puzzle he hadn't even known he'd been missing. And best of all, she made the words flow, strong and sharp. She was his muse.
Once again, sexism, which I will attribute to Wake and not necessarily to Thomas. But that even talking about how much, like, this is supposed to be the page where Tom talks about how much he loves Barbara, right? But instead, we got one sentence about her, and then the entire rest of the page is about him and how he feels and how being around her makes him feel good. And I realized that if I were Wake, I would not want to try to put a lot of details in that could be proven wrong. If this is supposed to work, I would try to keep everyone's motivations pretty vague and accurate, which anyone in love might be like, I don't know, you could probably twist this to sort of make it seem true, but, and also knowing that she was his muse, but, also just very gross here where, like, oh, the reason that the best of all is that she allows me to write better. Like, again, it's about him, and not her. And once again, I am just, maybe I should not assume that the game knows what it's doing, but I am going to attribute this to Wake's bias and not necessarily to all the characters
Some of the
being
taken
described.
retained echoes of their former selves, but these were just the nerve twitches of a dead thing.
Ouch.
Nothing remained but a shell covered and filled with darkness. In most cases, these puppets were enough for the purposes of the dark presence. But for anything more elaborate, as with the writer, it was different. It needed his mind. And so rather than taking him over completely, it merely touched him.
Again, because he's just so special. He's just such a special boy, and his writing is so good, and he's just so cool.
I stared through the bars of the jail cell. Barry stood behind me, swaying on his feet, looking as ill as I felt. Agent Nightingale stood on the other side of the bars with Sheriff Breaker. Nightingale had a stack of manuscript pages in his hand. He seemed unhinged as he gloated. "Well, I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. It's all here. All the evidence, including conspiracy to murder a federal agent. Things were never as simple in real life as in fiction. I had lost count of the times I had wished there'd be a clear reason for my writer's block. Something to fight. Something to lash out on. There wasn't. I was filled with doubt. I was nothing like the hero in my books. Alex Casey had gone through his life with single-minded determination, never wavering from his goal. Even now, I was angry at myself, angry at Alice, angry at Barry. I was fumbling and I had no plan.
Okay, yeah, this is still episode 3. Let me go back one. Yeah, we're on episode 5, so this happened like a while ago that we got these. Right?
Even behind the closed doors and curtains of his grimy room at the Majestic, the local motel, Nightingale could feel the locals' eyes on him, the unrelenting pressure of their judgment. He forced it out of his mind. For all he knew, they could all be under Wake's spell already. You do what you have to do to get the job done. He took comfort from the bottle in his hand. Please, he thought, just let me get through this.
Also interesting that he's writing Nightingale as being a lot more sympathetic than he's come off in the game so far.
Maude had checked all of Stucky's rental cabins. There had been no sign of the Wakes. It was dark when he'd found their car parked at the end of the road by Cauldron Lake. It made no sense. They must have taken a wrong turn, but there was no sign of them, and the car had been there for hours already. Frustrated, Mott stood on the rotten ruin of the footbridge that had once led to Diver's Isle before it sank beneath the waves years ago. The boss wouldn't be happy. I tried to hold on to Alice, but her form melted away. I was losing control. Dr. Hartman stood in her place. I wanted to hit him, but my arms were jelly. He smiled. It was a reassuring smile, and I hated him for it. I had to give you a sedative. Don't fight it. You went through another rough period. Right now, it's very important that you stay calm. We don't want you to have another episode. You're a patient at my clinic. Have been for a while now.
So again, if this is how Alan expected him to act, maybe it's not how he actually normally acts. Although the set dressing in the lodge does kind of imply that is how he normally is, I guess. Also, obviously, these are all out of order in terms of how they actually happened. So that one thing where it was like, oh, I thought he has a broken leg, then he broke his leg. What? I don't know why.
Spying on the writer on the ferry had been a disappointment. His boss had made Wake out to be something special, but Maude hadn't been impressed. He'd gotten a good long look at the wife, though, and he liked what he saw. Maude had fantasized about goading Wake into a fight, but it hadn't happened. Still, he'd get his chance to see if the writer had anything in him. He'd been promised as much.
Again, okay, so we have something about Alice, but all we know is that she is attractive to a man.
The hunters were big, thick-set men, confident and at home in the woods. They were feeling good, running on beer, ghost stories, and camaraderie late into the night. It did them no good, as they were taken by the dark presence, sucked deep into a darkness far worse than any ghost story they ever told or heard. Lightning flashed behind the windows of Cauldron Lake Lodge. Tor Anderson laughed and held the steel hammer above his head. Nurse Sinclair was trying to calm him down without success. Tor grinned madly and shouted, "My hammer's up. Here's a friendly poke from Molnir, wench." He brought the hammer down with all his might on Sinclair's head. "We're on a comeback tour, baby."
That probably killed her, right? Like, I know we got one moan when I was worried that she was dead, implying that perhaps she was alive, but, I don't think she will have been for long after that. Alright, these are the last chapters that I'll read through, because again, this is something that I think in character that we would
Zane could
have
feel
read.
the poems, taking form, shaping things. As he experimented, he imagined he could almost feel the power surging through the keys of the typewriter. It exhilarated him. But there was fear, too. If not for his young assistant Emil, he would have given it up. But Emil convinced him otherwise. He, too, had a way with words.
Okay. Okay. No, really, I remember when I was like, who's Emil? Lady of the Light did not seem to like him, but, Okay.
Hartman kept talking, giving Barry the grand tour, clearly proud of the place. He went on and on about his hunting trophies, and Barry was impressed. But he was here on business. He raised his voice, cut through the monologue. "Hey, Hartman, where's Al?" Hartman stopped in mid-sentence, annoyed at the interruption. He nodded at the hulking orderly standing nearby. The man smiled and clapped a practiced hand on Barry's shoulder.
I like that he was not actually planning to apparently lock up Barry until he just was like, "Hey, please don't continue this hunting story."
Hartman followed the fall of Alan Wake with his binoculars. When the rider hit the water, he ordered Jack to take the boat to him. The spot was easy to see in the dark, even with all the extra lights in the boat. The flare floated and kept burning even in the water. Jack turned the radio louder as the engine sputtered. The music was rough and clanking, something the Anderson brothers would no doubt have enjoyed. But Hartman chose to ignore it. Wake was finally within his reach.
Okay. So I guess this is saying when he fell in the lake why he woke up in Hartman's place. It doesn't say the full name, so I assume it's Jack Hartman, but I don't remember. Oh wait, no. Out of order, sorry.
Hartman knew he was no creator. He had no ambitions on that front. And he certainly didn't want to end up like every artist he had worked with here, damaged in ways that were hard to describe, or worse.
Yeah, that's
it was enough
sampling
for Hartman
bias.
to maintain creative control and provide direction, to be a producer. That was what most of these people were in need of anyway. Of course, suitable subjects were few and far in between.
It's just, I'm glad that Wake showed up, because he's such a cool guy, he's such a good writer. It's just, I love that he's here, and we want to take his cover, because he's just that cool of a guy.
I stared at the Viking paraphernalia that littered the area, surrounding an unlikely centerpiece. A full-size stage complete with an impressive sound system with all the trimmings, including a dragon. It took a special kind of crazy to build something like this in a remote field. When the sky split open with a deafening boom and the music started blasting, it felt strangely appropriate.
I did not remember the dragon.
For the moment, Barry was just glad he had survived the fall. He had been separated from Al, and there was no easy way to climb back up. He told himself he'd be okay in the gloomy forest at night. He would just have to wait for a while for Al to find his way down. Barry turned when he heard the heavy footsteps and saw the movement. The man-shaped shadow lunged at him from the bushes, an axe held high. Barry screamed and threw up his hand. The world exploded.
I think after I read these, I'm gonna get some food real quick. I probably won't be gone, but it'll have to be uploaded into different sections on the VOD, which I don't know why I care that much about them suddenly. So I guess V's gonna watch it, so, yeah.
Mott knew that Wake was smarter than him.
Oh my
Wake
god.
had money, a beautiful
Oh my
wife,
god.
everything. And Hartman said Wake was important.
Oh my
That made him better
god.
than Mott. But Mott was calling the shots now. He'd expected Wake to whimper and grovel, but instead, he seemed willing to fight. Mott knew he'd gotten under Wake's skin. If only Mott actually had his wife. The thought made him shiver.
Okay. Alright, yeah, okay. Also, I don't remember who Mott is. Like, it's a brand of applesauce. I'm gonna actually quickly search this, because I assume I know who it is, right? Ben Mott. That doesn't help. Ben Mott. Minor antagonist. Employee at the Cauldron Lake Lounge. Oh, so he... Wait, no. Oh, he's the quote-unquote kidnapper. Okay. And according to the wiki, so Emil Hartman... I didn't think Emil was old enough to be Zane's sidekick, but okay. So Emil hired this guy to masquerade as the kidnapper in order to blackmail her husband into giving him the complete manuscript of departure. Okay. I thought that stuff was all just very vague, and I thought Alan had just made it up and not followed up on it. Cool. And then when he was in that picture at the lodge, I guess I thought he was maybe a patient or something. I didn't realize he was implied. And then we was saying, oh, we just wanted blah, blah, blah. I thought he was working with the mob or something. Okay. Alright.
Hartman wasn't happy. Mott could see it in his eyes. He quickly lowered his own. He had made a mess of it, and he knew it. The shame of failure was hard to bear. He hadn't expected Wake to say he needed more time, and he blurted out 2 days, less than Wake had asked for, to show him who was in charge. But that wasn't part of Hartman's plan. Hartman hurried down the corridor. He had disliked leaving Wake when he was surely at his most susceptible to therapy. But this was not an ordinary storm. Wake had been writing, and he had woken something up in the depths of the lake. Now, it was coming for him. Hartman had naturally prepared for a situation like this. The idiot brothers would keep Wake distracted while Hartman double-checked everything, just to be sure.
I mean, it worked. I did stick around and listen to them, at least at first. Okay, so I thought he wanted the manuscripts and shit because he wanted the money. But yeah, if he was helping Tom,
Zane could feel the poems, taking form, shaping things. As he
okay, so it might even have been Emil Hartman that did the original resurrection shit? Huh?
Hartman watched as Wake's features slackened. The man was bullheaded, no doubt. Even lying on the bed, he'd almost broken Hartman's nose.
He's just so cool and strong and cool.
With a little time, he could break Wake down, give him proper direction. Wake was easily the most promising subject.
He's such a good writer.
Well, since Tom, really. Sleep well, Alan, Hartman whispered with a smile. Let me take care of you. He sniffed hard to clear his throbbing nose, swallowed blood, and barely tasted it.
Wait, so is he actually supposed to be gay in the evil kind of way? You know, like evil vizier kind of thing? Like, huh?
Agent Nightingale stared at the passed-out writer. The man was sleeping off one hell of a night. Nightingale felt a stab of envy at Wake's ability.
He's an alcoholic, that's all he thinks about.
He put the gun to Wake's head and almost became a murderer. His hand shook and his throat felt tight and dry. Biting his teeth, he tried again to pull the trigger. He lost the nerve. Wake stirred. Nightingale would have to settle for an arrest.
I mean, very funny if he had, if that hadn't happened. Then he just shot Wake, and Wake died. The end.
The storm raged on as the Anderson brothers walked unsteadily away from the clinic with the other patients in tow, knowing that this time they wouldn't return. The darkness around them seethed with horrors, but Tor and Odin were unafraid. Their eyes glinted with guile. They knew every secret path, and there was blood on their hands. They had fought these shades before. It's 1976.
Sorry. No, it's not.
The dark presence followed the choreography laid out to it in the manuscript, growing stronger and stronger, moving like a storm from one scene of destruction to the next. But it was still bound to follow the story and chained to the dark place it came from. When the story reached the end it longed for, it would finally be free.
Okay, interesting that it agreed to that. Also that it is using its pronouns.
It's 1976. Madness reigns at the Anderson farm. Contrary to all logic, the headiest ingredient of their moonshine is unfiltered water from Cauldron Lake. The Andersons feel like gods. Odin can't stop laughing. He contemplates cutting his eye out. Tor runs across the field, naked, shrieking, hammer in his hand, trying to catch lightning. Their songs have power. Something ancient is stirring in the depths, coming back.
Just picture that being overlaid on a dude running around naked in a field, going, I'm gonna catch the lightning! I'm gonna catch it! Your songs have power. That is something I know I used to know, but I didn't remember that the moonshine, which I think the narrative during the pause screens has helped kind of arrange things more than just the story has, saying that, no, this was like a kind of peyote or whatever, I don't remember the name of that, hallucinogen that people use for spiritual experiences in some cultures. But yeah, interesting. Okay. Also interesting that having drunk it would have led Wake toward the truth and figuring out how to defeat the darkness. If you'd think, if anything, the darkness would be taking more control if you drink it more. Also, yes, obviously, Odin did wind up stabbing his eye, probably because he only has the one, and that's also like an Odin thing, you know, for the god.
Again, Alice's screams rang in the stillness of the night. I saw myself run toward the cabin, flashlight in my hand. I followed my past self. I was an out-of-body observer, a time traveler in a crazy drunken dream. This was the beginning. The night Alice had disappeared. The mystery of what had happened during the missing week was about to reveal itself.
Then I just kept seeing Tor with his shit just swinging around instead.
For a moment, Hartman considered strangling the idiot. Mott was mean-spirited, but easily manipulated, an emotional infant who lived for his approval. Wake, by contrast, was a far more difficult subject. Mott had given him too much leash. In 2 days, who knew what could happen? Hartman would have to find a way to rein him in, and quickly.
Wait, so I thought Hartman was mad because, Mott had given Wake too much time, because it was like, oh, it was just Power Thing saying less than the week. But, doesn't that mean he did a good job? I mean, not, I guess, I don't know. You could always call him back and be like, Wake, I changed my mind, and you can't argue with me because I'm the kidnapper.
Deputy Mulligan tuned Thornton's chatter out. He didn't think riders were particularly useful people, and a huge manhunt for one struck him as idiotic. Certainly not worth the missed opportunity for coffee and pie.
Wow.
It wasn't even clear what the man had done, except run from them at the trailer park. Mulligan knew he wasn't alone. The sheriff's patience with the Fed was running out. As the deputies hauled Wake and Wheeler away, Agent Nightingale eagerly examined the stack of papers Wake had been carrying. It was incomplete, a collection of random pages, but there was enough. He saw his own name in there, among others. His hand shook with emotion. Finally, it was proof. He had been right all along.
Then maybe, like, the first... Let's see. Okay, we know about Cynthia's work, so we'll read up to that point,
Nightingale
actually.
tried to make sense of the manuscript. It was disjointed and strange.
Yep.
He didn't understand half of it, but it all rang true. Impossibly true. He took out his hip flask when he reached the page that described how he reached the page that made him take out his hip flask. It wasn't the booze that made his mind reel.
Say that 5 times fast. Also, wow, this explains why I've just been, like, a very flat character who is just interested in 1, chasing Wake, and 2, drinking alcohol.
Nightingale felt the situation veering out of his control, but the gun at least felt steady in his hands. He was ready to fire, resolved that he would let this happen over his dead body. And yet he hesitated. He had seen this moment before, read it in the page. He was transfixed by the déjà vu and the horror that he was a character in a story someone had written. Then the monstrous presence burst in behind him and dragged him into the night.
That's really kind of sad, because you would think that reading this, you'd be like, well, I'm the master of my fate, I'm the captain of my soul. You'd be like, okay, I know that this is going to happen to me, so I will change it. But he didn't. Which I guess does just prove that he was a flat character after all.
The darkness that wore Barbara Jagger's face was furious. The story in the manuscript had been making it stronger all the time, but now the light had set the writer free and hurt it, weakened it. It was only a matter of days before the dark presence would be strong again, but meanwhile, it would be difficult to recapture the writer.
I mean, again, Barbara was reading all this and was like, yep, okay, rewrite this part, okay, this is good. So, I don't fully get it there.
Cynthia Weaver worked hard, following her obsessive rituals, sometimes fighting them, always giving in to them in the end. She haunted the halls of Bright Falls abandoned power plant. She marked her caches with light-sensitive paint that could only be seen by eyes that had been touched by darkness and saved by light like she'd been. She was preparing defenses and supply lines for the war she knew would come. The war between the forces of light and darkness.
I'm not sure about that, paint-wise. Alright, so I'm gonna go get some food, Stream is gonna be going down for now. I will see you soon.